It is the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown, and this is the Golden Hour, your home for all things insights, discussions, interviews, and recaps about all things Kutztown sports. I am your host, Thomas Scuderi, here with you on another Monday morning, and this is another positive show. It's been a positive year for Golden Bear Athletics thus far, records being set, history being made, and all in all, success all around for our football, field hockey, volleyball, and soccer programs. We'll dive into it all here on the Golden Hour, but we'll start up first with our football program here. Again, another big win for the Golden Bears this past Saturday. Again, if you are unfamiliar, we will have coverage of all Kutztown football games here on KUR throughout the remainder of the season. We had it this Saturday as well. But Kutztown took down East Stroudsburg 49-6. East Stroudsburg was a team that was kind of highlighted on the schedule all year for this Kutztown program. Like, all right, this is going to be a tough game. It was a tough game last year. Kutztown snuck out a win 27-21 on the road last year against the Warriors. This time at home, barely even a contest. Kutztown, a little bit slow to start off the first quarter, only 7-0. After the first, East Stroudsburg was able to get some positive momentum. They were running a little bit on Kutztown, but some penalties set them back, and ultimately the Golden Bears were able to rally. The opening score of this game for Kutztown came unconventionally. Wide receiver Rich Procheski took a screen pass in the flat and elected to throw it. Not elected, it was the play call, but made the decision where he had the option to run. Threw it to Lanique Preston in the back of the end zone for the first score of the game. And Jaden Stewart will break off a 35-yard touchdown run in his return to the lineup. He has been hurt for a number of weeks. Ultimately came back against East Stroudsburg. Had finished the day with 2 touchdowns, his first of which was a 35-yard breakaway from the 35-yard line. Put Kutztown on top 14-0. Then a pick six by Jasir Harden would extend the score to 21-0. And then from there, it was just all Golden Bears. East Stroudsburg would end up chipping away a couple of field goals to make it 6, but ultimately Kutztown scoring 49 points. Third time this season that they have scored that number. They beat East Stroudsburg, who was number 2 in the conference, 49-6, to ultimately secure the PSAC East and officially cement their place in the PSAC title game on November 15th. It will be at Andre Reed officially. We've kind of been guessing that was going to be the case for a number of weeks now, but it is now officially there is no path for any other team to win the East, so Kutztown secures it. They head out to Bloomsburg on November the 8th at 2 o'clock. That will be this Saturday. Again, KUR will be out there as well to take on a struggling Huskies team before they turn their attention to trying to three-peat, win the conference. They won it in 24 and 23, are trying to win it in 25 as well and win 3 straight. Currently scheduled to play IUP on November 15th. That could very well be the matchup. IUP, if they beat Clarion University next week, or this upcoming week, I should say, on November the 8th, they will officially win the West, and it will be Kutztown versus IUP for the PSAC championship. Not what we were originally expecting at the beginning of the year. We thought it would be Cal or maybe Slippery Rock once again, who have been kind of the premier contenders over there in the West. But IUP surprising everybody, and ultimately, currently on their way to get the job done and face Kutztown for the first time since 2021. These two teams don't see each other very often. The last time they did, it actually went IUP's way in 21. They won 29-26 over the Golden Bears. Before then, Kutztown would eke out a win in their most recent matchup before that 2021 matchup in 2015, 34-33. They beat them in 2014, 44-7. But that's the only 2 program wins, or only 2 wins in the history of these 2 programs meeting for Kutztown. Kutztown has won 2. IUP has won 6. So a matchup that has historically favored the Golden Bears. And by the way, at the time that this 2021 game, Kutztown was ranked 18th in the country. IUP was ranked 15th before KU ultimately fell in that game. They were down big, 29-30. That was back when Jerome Cap was still on the team. Jerome Cap bounced around some NFL practice squads, mainly the New York Jets practice squad, before he has been in the UFL for a couple of years. So a professional player there. That's back when we had still a Jordan Davis. A lot of fun names to look back here in 2021. Still a good team there. But ultimately, Kutztown fell short to IUP. So We'll dive a little bit more into the history of that matchup in the coming weeks if it is indeed IUP that gets the job done and over there to secure the West and take on Clarion this week to do it. But for Kutztown, we'll dive into this box score a little bit for this ESU game. If you're not familiar, then we have some highlights we can play for you as well if you did not catch that game on Saturday. Judd Novak finished with a 13 for 17 passing for 255 yards. He had a long of 56 yards. That was a Noah Grisilla reception, who was the leading receiver. We'll get to him in a moment, I should say. And then Novak also had a touchdown pass as well. Antonio Russo came in the game once Novak had secured the victory with the offense. He only threw 3 passes, completed 2 of them for 32 yards. Rich Pacheski had a completion, a 5-yard touchdown pass, first of his career in both of those metrics. So we get into the rushing stats. The rushing stats, I should say. Jaden Stewart and Stephen Burkhart were the main 2 running backs, as per usual, when the 2 of them are healthy. There was no Eli Cunningham, who was sometimes, especially with the injury to Jaden Stewart, stepped up. But even when the 2 of them were healthy, Eli Cunningham would get some carries because he's a great running back as well. But there was no Eli Cunningham the last couple of weeks. He's been injured as well. Injuries have kind of started to come for Kutztown here, but they get a lot of their guys back against East Stroudsburg, and it showed. Jaden Stewart had 9 carries for 73 total yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 35, averaging 8 yards a carry. Stephen Burkhart was the leading back, had 12 carries for 114 yards and a touchdown, a long of 46, and averaged just under 10 yards a carry. So that is this Kutztown rushing attack at full force, obviously with Judd Novak in there as well, certainly able to be a threat with his legs. He had 4 carries for 27 yards, a long of 17, averaging just under 7 yards a carry. Craig Miller, Ben Martin III, also getting some carries, 4 for Miller, 5 for Ben Martin. Right around 3 or 4 yards of carry for those 2 guys as they were subbed in later on in the game once everything was secure. Harrison Susi, the starting quarterback for ESU, went 8 for 16, only 71 yards passing. Charlie McKee, who got a few snaps as well, went 1 for 8, and he was really their passing guy. Susi was a big-time rushing threat for 16 yards. Kutztown only allowing 87 yards defensively to an East Stroudsburg offense I believe was ranked 5th in the conference in their passing attack coming into the game. This shows you what the gap is between. East Stroudsburg is the second-ranked team in the East, or at least was before their loss to Kutztown. It really shows you the gap between Kutztown and really everyone else that we have seen throughout the year. They're so dominant as this Kutztown team. And turning to the rushing attack, Harrison Susi was the leading rusher. He had a net of 71 yards on 19 carries, long of 19. And Nigel Walker, the starting running back, carried the ball 11 times for 70 yards. So East Stroudsburg did have success on the ground, 206 yards rushing. A lot of them came from their quarterback. But ultimately got some help from their running backs as well. Cade Sawyer as well had 33. Kutztown, not quite, usually their rushing defense has been phenomenal. I believe it's second in the conference to only IUP, which that'll be a game to watch, if that is indeed the matchup on the 15th, if IUP is able to beat Clarion and come to town. These are 2 very good rushing defenses, so it would be interesting to see how those 2 clash in a couple of weeks. But looking to Kutztown receiving, Noah Grisilla was back in the lineup, and he was the big-time target here today for Judd Novak. He had 6 receptions for 141 yards, one of his best receiving days on the year, for a touchdown along with 56. Trevor Morum had a catch for 31 yards. Luke Maxwell, 1 for 28. Asa Coachfer had 1 for 26. Lanique Preston, another high reception day. He had 4 catches for 24 yards. Jamie Bryan had 1 for 23. Stephen Burkhart had 1 for 13. Caden Weaver had 1 for 6. Jaden Stewart was not targeted, neither was Benny Lyle, but they are in the receiving metrics as well. I believe they were targeted, but no completions for them. So ultimately, another good day for Kutztown, not only passing, but also rushing the ball. And you see, Noah Grisilla is, if you had to pick a number 1 receiver, Grisilla is probably the one that Novak favors the most. But there's not a true number 1 on this team. They will move the ball around to whoever they need to. It's part of what makes this offense so difficult to stop that we've seen so far this year. But if you did miss the Kutztown and East Stroudsburg game, we did have some highlights for you that we will splice together of different scoring plays and a couple of turnovers there. So this is Kutztown and East Stroudsburg this past Saturday. So now 3 receivers right on 3rd and goal from the 5. Stewart is the running back. Novak drops back, fires into Pacheski's in the backfield. Pacheski will throw to the end zone and it's caught. He had it long enough. Lanique Preston brings it in. He was able to get 2 feet in. So Rich Pacheski works right to left, takes the screen pass and throws it to Lanique Preston for the touchdown. That's a new one. Jade Stewart, the running back. Luke Maxwell is the tight end to the left of Ryan Trinecki. Stewart will switch sides. Now he's on the left. Play clock down to 5 as Novak takes a snap. Hands it downhill to Stewart. Stewart exploding up to the 20. Stewart to 10. 5. Touchdown on the halfback draw. Welcome back, Jaden Stewart. They trail by 14. Susie drops back. Airs it out left to Rhodes. Picked off. Jasir Harden to the 30. Now the 20. 10. 5. Pick 6. Jasir Harden. Priscilla and Jamin Bryant, the receivers out left. Camponia, the tight ends, off of the left tackle. Luke Maxwell is in the 3-point stance off of the right tackle. Burkhart, the running back. Handoff will go to Burkhart. Burkhart up the middle, breaks free. Burkhart to the 30. Now the 20. 10. 5. They won't get him. Touchdown, Kutztown. 27-0. They lead over ESU. And Andre Reed is rocking as they can sense their Golden Bears are on the brink of securing the East here today. 9 on the offensive line. Handoff turns, goes to Stewart. Stewart breaking his way forward. And he's in. The 7th touchdown of the year for Jaden Stewart. His 2nd of the day. And it is 34-0. Kutztown leading over East Stroudsburg. And it's still the first half, ladies and gentlemen. 24-yard line of East Stroudsburg. 3 receivers right, 1 left for KU. Stephen Burkhart still the running back. 2 Novak's right in the shotgun. Amorum sets up left after coming in motion. Novak drops back. Fires over the middle. Caught! Touchdown, Noah Crisilla.
I mean, not a bootleg, but he got it.
The standing strong in the pocket. Crisilla, just a simple post from the left side, working his way into the middle. And it is 41-3. Kutztown on top. 2 receivers left, 1 right. Handoff again goes to Walker. Walker working his way up the middle. Ball comes out. Who has it? Kutztown.
What a turn of events. There's the defense stepping back up.
There it is, forcing a turnover when they need it. It was Mike Fiemi that came up with the football. Coach Furman Weaver, the tight end's right. Handoff will go up to Ben Martin. Martin crosses the plane untouched. And Kutztown extends their lead even further. It is now 48-6. They lead over East Stroudsburg. A chance to make it 49 with this Wilson. So if you did not catch the game on Saturday, that is what you missed. Another high-power performance from the Kutztown offense. Defense and special teams stepping up as well. Not so much special teams in this past game, but defense getting some scores. Special teams have had kick returns for touchdowns. They've had blocked punts returned for touchdowns. Defense has had a number of pick sixes. That was the 2nd of the year. So all in all, a lot of things to like for Kutztown football. Looking nationally after that Week 9 game, Kutztown is the number 6 scoring offense in all of Division II. They're behind Central Washington, Virginia Union, Harding, University of Indiana. UIndy is the better way, not the Division I, University of Indiana. And then Ferris State, who is still a team to beat with just under 54 points per game at 53.9. Kutztown defensively is the number 2 scoring defense in all of Division II. They are behind Harding. Harding allowing just under 5 points a game. Truly impressive over there. And then Kutztown with allowing just over 7. Difference between 2nd and 3rd place, which is Kutztown and Findlay University. Findlay allowing 12. So about 5 points is the difference between 2nd and 3rd place for KU. And a bit later today, we're not sure if we'll have it by the time this show comes out. The NCAA will release their first regional rankings. So what that means, basically, if you're unfamiliar with the Division II playoff system, Kutztown is the 4 seed currently, or the number 4 ranked team in the country. The AFCA poll, which is the poll that Kutztown recognizes. A couple of polls have them at 3. The biggest discrepancy is Kutztown and West Florida. D2.com and Flow Sports will have Kutztown at 3 and then West Florida at 4. But the American Football Coach Association has West Florida at 3 and then Kutztown at 4. So Kutztown originally recognizes themselves as the 4 seed, but the way that the Division Two playoffs work, if you are unfamiliar, is that there are 4 super regions in the country. There's Super Region 1, which Kutztown is a part of, Super Region 2, 3, and 4. There's like 4, sometimes 5 conferences, maybe 3. Um, and actually, there's 16 total conferences, so there's 4 per super region in the country. There's 4 conferences per super region, and then the way that works is the first 3 rounds of the playoffs. There'll be 8. By the way, I'm doing a poor job explaining this. There are 4 super regions, 8 teams each. There are 16 conferences, so 16 teams get an auto bid. If you win your conference, you are in the playoffs. The remaining 16 teams are decided like at-large bids. So you go down the region. There'll be 4 auto bids per conference, and then 4 at-large bids. So that's how you get your 32 teams. There is no first round bye anymore. There used to be a first round bye because there were 7 teams. Now there's 8 because of the conference expansion. So it went from 28 teams to 32. So there's no more first round bye. So the first seed, the number 1 seed, will play the 8 seed. 2 will play 7. 3 will play 6. 4 will play 5. With the highest seed getting home games. From there, the remaining 4 teams that survive, the highest seed will play the lowest seed, and then the 2 lower seeds will play one another. So on and so forth until round 3, which is your Super Region Championship game, which is the last 2 teams remaining in each Super Region will play one another. The winner of that is crowned the champion of your Super Region. And then from there will be 4 teams left, 1 from each Super Region. The NCAA reseeds all of those teams based on what happened in the playoffs, what happened since their initial seeding at the conclusion of the regular season. And then the way it works is the 4 seed will play the 1 seed, and the 2 seed will play the 3 seed of now the reseeded Super Regions, with the winner of each of those games going to McKinney, Texas, to play for the national championship game, or play for the national championship in the national championship game. So the team that ultimately wins the national championship in Division Two will have to play 5 additional games at the conclusion of their regular season in order to, call themselves national champions. 3 in your Super Region, 4 the semifinals against the champion of another Super Region, and then the 5th game, which is what our other team is left. So, if you're not familiar with the way that these Super Regions work, which I certainly was not before I started, heavily diving into Division Two football here, Super Region 1, which is the Super Region that Kutztown plays in, it contains the CIAA, the MEC, the NE10 conference, and the PSAC. It is probably the weakest super region in the country in terms of like how often does a team that wins that super region actually go on and beat the champion of another super region and then go to the national championship game. The answer is not much. The last time a team from Super Region 1 made it into the PSAC championship or the national championship game, which means you're one of the 2 best teams in the country at least, because you survived to that point, was Bloomsburg in 2000, the year 2000. Before then, IUP made it in 1993, and then since then, hasn't happened. As far as I could find, going back through the NCAA's metric, a team from Super Region 1, this could be, the Super Region shift around a lot, so it's possible. A team that is currently in Super Region 1 right now has never won a national championship, as far as I could find. This could be, maybe back in like 1950, a team won before the modern playoff system. But in the modern system, with how we have come to crown a champion in Division Two, a team from Super Region 1, as it stands right now, has never won a Division Two national championship. So that is what Kutztown has to try. If they're going to make it all the way, those are the odds that they're against. And the reason that is the case is that Super Region 2, 3, and 4 are such gauntlets that typically the team that comes out of there is so fortified because of the tough games that they've already played that they just go on and they kill whatever team's left. We saw it last year. Valdosta stayed out Super Region 2. Super Region 2 is probably the second. If you had to go based on like the strength of what Super Region is the most difficult, Super Region 3 is the most difficult Super Region, followed by Super Region 4, followed by 2, followed by 1, would be my personal assessment, just on what I have seen. But Ferris State is in Super Region 3. Ferris State has won several national championships. They've appeared the national championship game pretty much every year since 2019. They lost it in 22, and then but they won it, I believe, in back-to-back years. So they won it in 23, and then they won it or did they win it in 23? Hold on. Let me fact check this real fast before I start saying things that aren't true. So they won in 24. That we know for sure. And the reason that the Kutztown loss to Slippery Rock was so frustrating was because Slippery Rock gave Ferris State probably their toughest game of the season. This is including the national championship game, by the way. And by far they did. So let's go through 2024. This is Ferris State. They opened the season with a 19-3 loss against Pittsburgh State. So I guess second toughest game of the season, right? Pittsburgh State, another nationally ranked team. This was back when Trinidad Chambliss, by the way, who has been at Ohio State and been a story in Division II or at Division I and Division II level for the year now. They responded with a 56-3 win over Lake Erie, 43-3 win over Ashland, 84-7 win over American International, and so on and so forth. They basically beat everyone by multiple scores all the way up until playoff time. So, by the way, Central Oklahoma, not a bad team. They met in the second round of the NCAA Division II playoffs. This is a round that Kutztown ultimately fell in last year, by the way. They met Central Oklahoma, a playoff team, and beat them 78-17 in the second round of the playoffs. At that point, Ferris State had a bye. And Saginaw Valley, by the way, 27-24. Also another tight game. Saginaw Valley, I believe Ferris State plays Saginaw Valley this week. They gave them a tough matchup last week, and Ferris State has had a couple of tough matches back-to-back, so we'll be keeping an eye on Ferris State this week, and I'll explain a little bit later in the show why. But ultimately, they went and beat Harding, which Harding's another top 2 team right now. 41-7. Harding has since moved super regions because of the expansion. Handled Harding easily. Then in the semifinals of the NCAA Division II national tournament, played Slippery Rock, beat Slippery Rock 48-38, and I want to pull up the box score again for it because I did watch that game, but it's been a while since I've actually looked at it. My understanding is that Slippery Rock was up a couple of touchdowns at one point in that game. Yes, at halftime, Ferris State was down 38-27 to Slippery Rock at home. Ultimately, Slippery Rock was not able to score, past that, and 21 unanswered points for Ferris State gave them the win. But a Slippery Rock team that needed an overtime trick play hook and ladder to beat Kutztown in the quarterfinals, in the second round, would then go on to win the Super Region and give Ferris State, the eventual national champions, the biggest scare that they had that entire year, aside from the loss to open up the game, obviously. Northern Michigan the box score does not look close. It was 70-35. I believe it was 21-all at one point at halftime. So Ferris State is beatable. Grand Valley State, another good team. 38-31. Ferris State just eked it out. Saginaw Valley State, the team that gave them a bit of a scare at a close game last, plays them this week. And then Davenport, Davenport has not been that great this year. So Ferris State will probably take care of them. But the reason all this is important, right, is because what I said earlier is about the reseeding. The way it works is that the top 4 teams that come out of each super region are reseeded based on record, strength of schedule, the teams they beat up through the playoffs in that point, and so on and so forth. So basically, your best 2 teams will be 1 and 2. They'll get a home game. The 3 and 4 seed, who are determined to be not as good or whatever for whatever reason, will have to go on the road. The reason why that is important and why we keep an eye on Ferris State and Harding is because basically, unless they lose, they'll be the 1 and 2 seed, no matter what. They've had some close scares, but when a team's been that good for that long, they're not dropping out of those spots unless they lose either in the regular season and then drop in the standings, or if they're upset in the playoffs and then their season's just done. So the reason we keep an eye on that is because Kutztown, even if they make it through, Super Region 1, they win those 3 games and they're Super Region 1 champions, now they'll have to go on the road to either Ferris State, which is in Michigan, or Harding, which is in Arkansas. Or potentially, even if one of those drop, in West Florida, who AFCA has at the 3 slot, would go up to 2. Kutztown would be 3 and still have to go on the road to whoever number 1 is. So that would probably be whoever Ferris State and Harding doesn't drop to. If I had to guess right now, let's say that the playoffs go exactly the way everyone expects, and Ferris State, Harding, West Florida, and Kutztown all get through. Kutztown would probably be the 4 seed in that scenario, just because the AFCA, which has a little bit more weight than D2.com and like Flow Sports, another team. So the R rankings have Kutztown at 3, but there's no real way to know how the NCAA would view those teams in those circumstances. It depends on which poll they would value most, and they would probably value the coaches poll, which would have Kutztown at 4. So in that case, Kutztown would have to go to Michigan and play Ferris State. Not that you want to go to any of these schools particularly. You want home field advantage, obviously. Um, that's a tough matchup, Ferris State on the road. So the reason we keep an eye on them and Harding and even West Florida a little bit is because the hope is that some of those teams start dropping a game. Maybe a fluke at the end of the season. You never know. And then they have a tougher. Not only do they have a tougher Super Region schedule because they may have to go on the road now in the Super Region, but even if they make it all the way through, a one-loss Ferris State team would be seated lower than an unbeaten Kutztown team. So that's why we keep a look at that. That's why that's kind of important. It's not important for the coaching staff right now because they're just focusing one game at a time. But that's we can start to look, as fans, as people to cover the team, whatever. Okay, well that's the situation that Kutztown is in if they have to go on the road. It's less favorable than if they are welcoming in Ferris State at home. So, what we have right now that we'll talk about, we don't later today. We will get the official regional rankings, for which there's still time for that to change. But we'll get 10 teams from each super region. And they'll be ranked. Kutztown will be ranked the 1 seed. We know this. There's almost no world where Kutztown is not the 1 seed in Super Region 1 as of right now. Obviously, if they lose a game before now in the beginning of the playoffs, they can drop. But what we really want to keep an eye on is some of those lower seeds, right? Because these are how the matchups are going to go. So right now, according to Flow Sports, who is usually relatively accurate, he put out his D1 bracketology, which has each super region ranked. So we don't know if this is official, but this is what he has as the current, kicking into account the rejected conference champions, which will get the 1 through 4 seeds, and then your at-large bids. So right now it has Kutztown at the 1, Virginia Union at 2, Johnson C. Smith at 3, Assumption at 4, IUP at 5, California University of Pennsylvania at 6, Slippery Rock at 7, and then Frostburg State at 8. So if the playoffs started right now, according to this poll, Kutztown would host Frostburg State, Slippery Rock would go to Virginia Union, Cal would go to Johnson Smith, and then Assumption would host IUP. So those are some pretty good matchups. What that is also showing us is what is happening over there in the PSAC West. Those IUP, Cal, and Slippery Rock have pretty much beaten each other. They've gone round and round, but IUP is the front runner as of right now. So even if there's a world, Frostburg State, who just, I believe, lost to Cal, picks up a win, maybe Cal drops, Slippery Rock goes down to the 8th seed, and Kutztown, again, has to play Slippery Rock in the first round, which I'll tell you what, the team wants Slippery Rock, and I don't blame them, and I still think they would. I personally would be a little, not scared, but I still have PTSD from what happened last year in 2024 against Slippery Rock, where Kutztown got walked off on their home turf to ultimately end their season. Despite being PSAC champions, they would not win a playoff game that year, despite having the first round bye. So I would imagine, I talked to Judd Novak at the beginning of the year, and he said, we're hoping to get another crack at Slippery Rock at some point this year because they want revenge from what happened. And I would like this Kutztown team over this Slippery Rock team this year, but I also liked them last year over Slippery Rock that year. So, that just also goes to show you upsets happen. Sometimes teams just go on a run. Slippery Rock was a little banged up that year. They had dropped a couple games they probably shouldn't have. But they ultimately went on a run and almost beat. They were led by 2 scores on the road at halftime against the eventual national champions. Just 1 game before the national championship. Ferris State would go on to handle Valdosta State, by the way, in the national title game to finish off that story. Got a little sidetracked there. But West Florida is at the 1 seed out of Super Region 2. Ferris State is at the 1 seed in Super Region 3. And then Harding, Western Oregon are 2 teams I believe have played a couple times. Western Oregon is the 8. Harding is the 1. So there's some tough teams in these Super Regions. Findlay is in Super Region 3. Ashland can be tough over there. Minnesota State. So those are teams that Ferris State will have to get through. Harding is Central Washington, CSU, Pueblo, Western Colorado, Pittsburgh State's another tough one. So there's some teams that can do some damage in there. Albany State in Super Region 2, Kentucky State, Carson Newman. Um, so ultimately, the ideal scenario, right, for Kutztown is they win their Super Region. Obviously, they win the PSAC championship before that. Obviously, um, and then Super Region 3 and 4. There's some upsets, and they do so much work beating each other up to get out of the Super Region that Kutztown can kind of take on a little bit of an easier team at home and try and punch their ticket to McKinney, Texas for the national championship game. So we don't. I can do one more double check before we kind of start to wrap things up here. But we will get this first regional rankings today. It's usually a little later in the day, so it probably is not out yet. But we'll do one last double check just to make sure that they're not officially out yet. I believe, yeah, there's still the alpha. If you look it up right now, there's the alphabetical version. So last year, they released some of the top 10 teams, but alphabeticalized. So it had like Assumption at the 1, Cal, Charleston. Like Kutztown was down at Kutztown was the 8 seed in the first rankings, which obviously is not the case. But it's just because it's alphabetical, um, not regional. So we don't have the updated regional yet. We'll do one more refresh to make sure that's still the case, and it's not. So keep an eye on Kutztown social channels a little bit later today. That being, check out their Instagram, check out their Twitter, check out Kutztown Athletics website. Once those come out, they'll have a story about where Kutztown is ranked in that regard. But real quick around the rest of the PSAC for this upcoming week, Slippery Rock is up at Edinboro for that November 8th game. All these games will happen on Saturday, November the 8th. Cal U is taking on Gannon. IUP against Clarion. Again, if IUP is able to get the job done there on the road, they will secure a ticket to the PSAC title game next week at Andre Reed Stadium. Westchester takes on Shippensburg. Shepherd, who has really had a resurgence in the second half of the season ever since that Kutztown beatdown, will take on Lockhaven. I don't think they've lost since that Kutztown game. I can double check. They're 5-4 now. They were 0-4 once Kutztown took them down, and yeah, they lost to Kutztown 49-10 on Family Day. Did Shepherd here? Ultimately, they went on the road to Millersville, won that game, beat Westchester, then Bloom, then East Stroudsburg. They upset East Stroudsburg a couple weeks ago, and then beat Shippensburg. So now over 500 in a year that seemed like it might have been lost after starting with 4 straight losses. But now a chance against Lockhaven and Seton Hill to, finish 6-4 and likely not get a playoff bid. But you never know, right? You win out. I would imagine the committee would say the team that you are at the end of the year is not necessarily the team you are at the beginning of the year. So even though you have 4 tough losses, there can potentially be a case, if Slippery Rock drops, if Cal, if IUP goes, for a Shepherd team to make their way into the playoffs. Certainly unlikely, but the chance is less than 0 if Shepherd can get the job done there. Kutztown obviously on the road at Bloomsburg. That will be a 2 p.m. kick. 2 p.m. kick for Kutztown and Bloomsburg on the road in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. That game will be carried by us here on KUR. We're making the trip out there to Bloom. They also have a dedicated radio station, 106.5 Bigfoot Country, comes in and calls all of their games as well. So for whatever reason you don't listen to the KUR feed, but you're traveling, you can listen to 106.5 as well for the Bloomsburg call of that game. And then, of course, there's the video stream as well. So 3 ways to listen there to that game next Saturday. And then Millersville and East Stroudsburg have an evening clash in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania at 6:05 as the Warriors try to potentially put together a case for themselves to be in the playoffs in an at-large bid as well. They have to win out pretty much the rest of the way and get a little bit of help for that to be the case. So that is what's upcoming this week in Kutztown football, or really in PSAC football more so than just Kutztown football. But we'll switch gears now. We'll talk a little bit of field hockey before we take a break and round out the show here today. Kutztown not the only team getting the job done. The regular season came to a close this Saturday, and KU field hockey beat Shippensburg 2-0 to secure a perfect regular season. They finished 18-0 on the year, the first time in program history they've ever had a perfect regular season. It was the most amount of games they've ever won in a row. Before then, the record was 10. It really seemed like when you kept an eye on the field hockey program, like, all right, they're a really good team, and it's clear that they're the number one team in the country. But they have some tough games coming up, right? They got Millersville on the road. Like, they have number 5 Westchester at home. Like, a lot of room between that for this team. I mean, they're facing number 2 team in the country right before playoffs. Like, there's plenty of time for this team to drop a game. Like, surely, they're not going to go perfect. And they did. Perfect regular season for Kutztown. They are the undisputed number 1 team in the country. I know I believe there might be one other unbeaten team in field hockey Division 2. I want to double check. I believe Newberry might be unbeaten, but I want to check before I say that for sure. I haven't checked in a couple of games there. So we'll see if they are still indeed unbeaten. And they are. They're 16-0 going into the South Atlantic Conference tournament. That will start off this Friday, and the champion will be crowned on Sunday. They'll be hosting that. So keep an eye on Newberry as well. If potentially they are an unbeaten team going into the Division II national playoffs. But as remarkable as this season is, Kutztown still, field hockey that is, have their sights set on a conference title. Again, in 2023, they won the national championship. In 2024, they were the runners-up, losing 1-0 to St. Anselm in the national title game. Despite that, Kutztown has never won a PSAC title in field hockey, which is pretty crazy when you think about it, how a team that has appeared in back-to-back national championship games have not won their own conference. But they will try and do so here. They get a first-round bye in the PSAC tournament. They will host the semifinals and the title game no matter what on November 7th at 3 o'clock, and then the PSAC championship game is Sunday at noon. So they'll play at 3. If they win, they go on to the noon title game. After that, I should get the tournament up here. Now, shouldn't I? The 4 teams that made it. It's Shippensburg. It's the teams you would expect. But I'll get that official standings up here because I forget exactly how they see that. I was looking on Saturday, but that loads will continue to take you through. Again, unbeaten season, but the winner of the PSAC championship, obviously, usually a lot of times will go on to secure the national championship. But there have been years that teams are so exhausted, giving it all, trying to win the conference, that they end up falling in the national tournament because they're just so beat up and so spent trying to get the job done for the conference. But the quarterfinals start on November the 15th. It is a Saturday. You have to imagine that Kutztown will probably, barring an instant loss, would probably be hosting a quarterfinal game, if not a semifinal. Actually, the semifinals are in Bloomsburg no matter what. So Bloomsburg is hosting the national championship game this year, which is intriguing for us here on KUR because that's a game we've thrown about. Well, if Kutztown's in a national title game, let's go out. We'll call that game on radio. So stay tuned for that in a couple weeks if Kutztown does punch their ticket to the NCAA National Championship game in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania for field hockey. KUR will be out there. But November 15th is when the field hockey championships, the national tournament will get started. About 6 days after the semifinals, again in Bloomsburg, and then Sunday, November 23rd, a national champion will be crowned at the Division II level. Standings here. So Kutztown is the 1 seed. East Stroudsburg is the 2 in field hockey. They get the byes. Shippensburg will play Bloomsburg, and then Westchester will play IUP. The 6 teams that have punched their ticket to the PSAC championship game. Kutztown will get the winner of Westchester and IUP. Got the 4 and 5 seeds. So the winner of that game will head to Andre Reed Stadium at 3 o'clock to play the Golden Bears. The winner of Shippensburg and Bloomsburg will play East Stroudsburg at 5:30 at Andre Reed. And then the winner of those 2 games will play Sunday at noon on November the 9th to try and secure a PSAC title. For Kutztown would be their first if they're able to do it. But a lot of tough teams there, top six in the conference. All of them, have some national rankings to them as well. It shows you how good the PSAC is at field hockey. But Coach Schuing has ran back two remarkable seasons with one that we didn't even necessarily think was possible. I mean, going unbeaten in the PSAC, which is by far the most difficult conference in field hockey, it's almost unheard of. I mean, in 2024, again, the team that went to the national title game, they went 16-6 with a pair of losses to Shippensburg. In 2023, a year that they won it all, they still went 19-3. They didn't win the PSAC title. They lost to Shippensburg 1-0 in overtime before beating Pace, Ship, and then East Stroudsburg in the national title game. They also had losses earlier on in the year to East Stroudsburg. They had one more that I'm glossing over here in 2023. It was Ship again. So both years they've lost to Ship twice, 2023 and 2024, and then ultimately won in the semifinal game to head to the national championship game. This year they don't lose to Ship at all. They play him in the final game of the regular season to secure an 18-0 finish to the regular season, 9-0 in conference play beginning the postseason tournament. So season really starting to wind down here for our fall programs. Obviously, Kutztown football has a couple weeks left, field hockey, soccer, and volleyball. But we'll briefly step aside here on the Golden Hour. We'll have more to talk about on the other end. You're listening to the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown, and this is the Golden Hour. I'm your host, Thomas Scuderi. Going to round things out here with soccer and volleyball talk before we get you back to your regular programming here on KUR. And for the women's soccer team is where we'll start the second half here. Westchester has secured the 1 seed in the tournament, but Kutztown secured a playoff berth a few games ago. Currently second in the East, well in line to host a PSAC playoff game. Again, that tournament will begin on November the 8th, this Saturday, for the first round. Quarterfinals are on Tuesday. Semifinals are next Friday, the 14th. And then Sunday, November 16th, a PSAC women's soccer champion will be crowned. KU will close out their regular season on Thursday, November 5th at 3 o'clock against Shippensburg. That will be a home match. They look to close out with 3 straight wins. They are coming off a win on the road against Bloomsburg and a 4-1 win over ESU. They fell to number 21 Westchester 2-0 on October 22nd and then tied Millersville before that. So 10-4-1 for this Kutztown soccer program. We had Coach Eric Burstein on a couple of weeks ago. He was great. Has liked what his program's been building here, and they've had plenty of success as they try and get back to the NCAA Women's Soccer Championship. That would start November the 20th. They did make it last year, winning their first round match before losing in the second rounds. December 5th through the December 7th are the third rounds and the quarterfinals of the national tournament, with a national champion being crowned over the weekend on December the 11th through December the 13th, that Saturday. So well in the hunt here are the Golden Bears. It starts with winning their conference, obviously, and then turning their attention to trying going on a run for a potential women's soccer national championship. Another program that's trying to get to the postseason is the Kutztown women's volleyball program. If they are able to do so, it would be the first time that the women's program here at Kutztown made it to the postseason since 2011. They are trying to break a lengthy playoff drought. They have picked 2 straight victories up this past weekend over Bloomsburg and Lock Haven. They beat Bloomsburg 3-0 and Lock Haven 3-1. They're on the road against Westchester and Millersville on Friday and Saturday before turning their attention back home on November 14th against Shepherd and Shippensburg that Saturday. Looking at where they are in the PSAC rankings currently, they were at, the way that the postseason works, it is the top 6 teams from either, or I believe the top 4 teams, from either the East and the West that will pit together. Kutztown currently right on the outside looking in. They're 4-6 in conference play, currently sitting at the 5 seed. behind Westchester and Shepherd, both teams that they'll see before the end of the year. So they kind of control their own destiny here. If they're able to win those two matches, you can get within 1 point. Um, Another tough match upcoming against Millersville. Millersville 1-9 in conference play. They always play tough, 6-18 overall. So Kutztown battling for a playoff spot. Shippensburg and East Stroudsburg at 10-0 and 9-1 respectively have already secured a postseason spot. Gannon has secured the 1 seed at 10-0 in the West, but the rest of the field is still open there at the 1 seed in the West, in the West. But Kutztown trying to make it back to the playoff and snap a playoff drought in the first year of Jason Barshinger's tenure here at Kutztown. If you remember, Kutztown in 2024, their volleyball team went 1-27 before Barshinger was hired as the head coach, and has really started to turn this thing around. KU currently sits at 12-12 overall. They've been hovering around 500 pretty much all year. They've dropped a couple games before they've gone a game or two ahead, but have been a 500 level team that is trying to put on the burners here at the end of the season and secure a trip to the PSAC tournament to try and play for a conference championship. Take a look at some of these stats here for this volleyball program before we round things off here on the Golden Hour. We'll do one final check before the end about the football regional rankings, because those could come out really any minute here. Keep an eye on that. Or a couple of those things load. Get the volleyball statistics up here. So, looking at the leaders, Paige Skinner is the leader in kills. She has 330. Madeline Begovic has 301. She's second. Grace White, 134. Lauren Montgomery, 125. And Alex Haskins is fifth on the team with 78 kills. Sage Thibodeau, by far the leading libero in digs. She has 479. Second on the team is Madeline Begovic with 274. Emma Baldridge has 253, Paige Skinner 202, and Mallory Hoke 162. Emma Baldridge has 826 assists as it stands. Crossed the 1,000 career assists mark earlier this year. She, by far and away leads the teams, the setter there. Sage Thibodeau has 77, Alice Frank has 73, Madeline Begovic with 21, Mallory Hoke with 14. Grace White has 63 blocks. She is the leading threat right around the front of the net there. Alice Haskins is at second with 41. Lauren Montgomery has 40. Emma Baldridge has 17. And Madeline Begovic has 13. Begovic also leads the team in service aces with 41. Paige Skinner is 37th, or has 37 and is second on the team. Sage Thibodeau is third with 37 as well. Emma Baldridge has 30, and then Mallory Hoke has 26. So those are your statistical leaders for the volleyball program. It'll get you where that stands in the rest of the conference here on the Golden Hour. Then we'll briefly preview basketball season, which is upcoming, wrestling as well, before we send you on your way here on the Golden Hour. Again, I've been Tommy Scuderi here with you. And we'll put up the phone lines for the last 9 minutes or so. If you have any thoughts on, Kutztown football, volleyball, field hockey, soccer, anything that you want to say, now is the time. Our phone line is 610-683-4058. Again, that's 610-683-4058 if you want to call in, give your thoughts, ask a question, whatever you deem appropriate here on the Golden Hour. There's about 9 minutes left in the show. We'll keep the phone lines open for that if you have something that you would like to say about one of our Kutztown athletic teams here. So again, that number is 610-683-4058 if you'd like to call in to the Golden Hour here. Paige Skinner does lead the conference in kills, getting back to volleyball specifically. She's played in 82 sets, is 330, leads all of the conference in that metric. Paige Skinner also 13th in service aces. Madeline Begovic is 14th in the conference. Emma Baldridge 6th in assists. Box Kutztown does not have anyone in the top 15 there. Sage Thibodeau is second in the conference in digs. So that's where you're starting to see this volleyball team pull away here. as the season starts to come to a close. Again, the soccer team takes on Shippensburg Wednesday, November 5th at 3 o'clock. Volleyball season a little bit longer as they start to look to close things out and try and get back to the playoffs here. Field hockey has already concluded their regular season. They will start the PSAC semifinals this Friday. Football has a couple of games left against Bloomsburg, and then the PSAC championship game is technically a postseason game. It depends who you ask if it's regular season or not. I say nah. It's not a tournament like a lot of other sports, but I don't think it is. But if you don't count, I think the number's 27 now. If you don't count regular season games, Kutztown has won 27 straight regular season games. If you don't count PSAC championships, if you do, it's 29. So it could be 30 with this game over Bloomsburg. They have not lost a home playoff game since 2022 in November, or home regular season game, I should say, since 2022 against Cal. So this is a football program has been terrific, as has his field hockey program. Soccer and volleyball have been making strides as well. All in all, it has been a very good, fall athletic season for Kutztown here. Again, I'll plug the phone line one more time if you want to call in, have any thoughts before we close out the show here on any of our Kutztown athletic teams. The number is 610 683 4058. Again, that's 610 683 4058 if you'd like to call the KUR studio line. I'll be open for another 5 minutes or so, should anyone have interest in doing so. The men's basketball team was picked 8th of 9th in the East preseason poll. They are under head coach Tom York, who is in his first season as head coach. Coach Bernie Triscoll, longtime head coach of that team, has retired over the offseason. Tom York will serve as the interim head coach until the end of this year, where the university will conduct a national coaching search to find who that candidate is. It could very well be Tom York. If he performs well this season, makes a case for, I want to be here, and here's the success I just had as interim. They can very easily just promote him to regular head coach and save the trouble of bringing in somebody new. The women's basketball team was picked second in the PSAC East preseason poll. They are coming off their PSAC championship winning season last year. Picked second there. They will start off their season in a couple weeks. They have some out of conference games against Glenville State and Salem at Westchester University on November the 14th and Friday the 15th, before opening up with 4 straight home games. November 19th, that is on a Wednesday at 5:30 against Penn State Schuylkill Valley. November the 22nd against Jefferson at 1 o'clock. December the 1st against Wilmington, Delaware, and then December the 6th against IUP. And then you start getting into the thick of it there. With basketball season, the men's team also has Penn State Schuylkill Wednesday the 19th. They will then go on the road to Georgian Court before being back home December the 1st on Monday against Frostburg State, and then December the 6th against IUP. And from there, it's pretty much just double headers the entire way, with the women's and men's team both facing the same opponents, as it's easier to schedule it that way. December 1st will be one of the only times that they both have 2 separate opponents on the same day. Wilmington, Delaware, for the women's team, and then for the men's team, it'll be Frostburg State. So that's a little bit of a basketball preview. We won't dive too much into that. We'll wait for a couple of later shows before we start talking basketball. It's just a little bit too early. I know it's November, but a little bit too early to talk basketball. But we'll do some final recaps on the women's team. They finished 22-12 last year before winning the PSAC championship over Edinburgh on March the 9th, and then fell in the first round of the national tournament to Seton Hill 87-75. So that was the women's team. That's how their season ended. The men's team, less than spectacular. I think they finished with 8 wins total. But both teams looking, to right those wrongs. The big news for the men's team is that Jalen Bryan, who we were unsure if he was actually going to come back because he was a senior, still has a year of eligibility, is back as a grad student this year. So he'll be back as well. One final check of the regional rankings, and they have not yet been updated. So keep an eye on ncaa.com for that. Those will be coming out probably in the next couple hours or so at the latest. Kutztown is expected to see the 1 seed, but you can see where the 2 2 through 8 seeds are projected to be. But that has been the golden hour here on the radio voice of Kutztown University KUR. I've been your host, Tommy Scuderi. I appreciate spending your hour here on this Monday afternoon. First show of November as the semester starts to round to a close here. Crazy that, we're already starting to talk winter break upcoming here and winter sports getting going in just a couple of weeks. That's how it goes, I guess. I have been Thomas Scuderi here on the Golden Hour. Appreciate you all, listening in. We will send you back to your regular programming here on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.